Hi, my name is Guy Lawrence and thanks for tuning into my podcast today. If you're enjoying these conversations and you want to check out more of this transformational work, be sure to come back to guylawrence.com.au and join me as we go further down the rabbit hole. Enjoy the show. David, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me along. Great to be here.
I ask everyone, if you were at say a intimate dinner party right now with strangers, and you sat next to someone and they started talking to you and asked you what you did for a living, what would you say?
Well, I'd say excuse me. My apologies.
That's all right.
What I'd say, I'd say, well, this is going to be an unusual one for you, and then I said, I think I would start by telling my story, just very briefly, about what happened to me and how my life had suddenly turned around and changed, and from where I was at before and now. I've had a life-changing event that has brought me to become an artist and a composer, and now an author of a book. That's how I'd basically put it across, I guess, yeah, and start to explain it.
Does that happen much to you at the moment? And what is people's reactions if it does?
It's interesting actually, because most people are really fascinated by it, by the story. It's at first I thought to myself, how am I going to start when I'm explaining my story to people? Are they really going to get it? And it was important to me that they did get it. And so I kind of figured, once I did start talking about it, people were really fascinated and really interested, no matter where they come from.
Right.
Because my story is something that is not, it's going to appeal to everybody at the end of the day, because it's all about, death and the afterlife. And I guess ultimately none of us really think about or talk about death at all in Western civilization. So once you bring it to a dinner party table and it's coming from my point of view, then it's quite interesting. It's not morbid and or what have you. So people are fascinated to hear about it.
Yeah, it's if anything, it's inspiring. Like I'd stumbled across your work and I was just like, holy moly, this is fantastic. Like not what you went through, but the message that you have behind it makes you feel like so hopeful about things, and for me it removes fear. Right. As well.
Yeah, that's what quite a few people have been getting back to me and saying, which is fantastic, because that's one of the main sort of things right from the off that I wanted to do. That I wanted people to lose all sort of expectations and fears of death, and actually realize that there's beauty that awaits us all, and that that the soul lives on, basically. That death is not the end. It's the next stage of the journey.
Yeah, incredible. I'm curious as well, before we get into the story, because you mentioned now you're an artist and a composer.
That's
which is
right.
Just mind-blowing. What were you doing like before all this happened?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm dyslexic, so I'd left school without qualifications. So it was a struggle for me to find work, to be honest with you. And so I'd moved down to London, and I'd moved down there, and I was just hoping just to sort of make an interesting life for myself down there. And basically the work I was picking up was mainly manual laboring, blue collar work. And so I was just living on a hand by hand sort of day-to-day basis, but I wasn't really good at that kind of work either. So it was quite a struggle for me to pick up work. It was just by charm and sheer luck that I got through, but that's where I was at. So I wasn't a composer and I wasn't an artist by any shot at all. So it's quite a turnaround for me from where I was at then and where I'm at now in many ways.
That's incredible. Had you an inkling that you wanted to be a composer and artist before, or did it just come like out of the blue after the accident?
I wouldn't have, if you'd taken me back to that person I was then and you'd asked me that question, I would have been going, what? No way. There's a composer, artist, that's never going to happen. I was just like, I was at the stage where I was like standing back and watching guys plastering a wall and saying, how'd you do that? That's a work of art, So I just didn't think I was good at anything, So there was no way I got any self-belief or self-confidence to have even thought about doing anything like that at all. So all that came basically after I'd had a near-death experience, which just gave me this kind of, I don't know, it just gave me this self-confidence and self-belief almost instantaneously, you know.
That's insane. That's amazing. It's such incredible. Now let's take people through the journey then. So when did the accident happen, first of all? What year were we talking
Yeah,
about?
it happened in 2006, and
2006. Wow.
yeah, so it's, in all fairness, it's probably taken me a while to sort of get the book out, but because of my dyslexia, I never thought I'd actually be able to write a book, as it were. So I was I found that since all this happened as well, that there's been a lot of synchronicity has come into my life, and there was loads of different things sort of came my way that I wasn't expecting. And one of those things was that an old friend that I hadn't been in touch with for years got in touch with me, and we got chatting, and she said, "What were you up to and stuff?" And we started talking about me and about my story, and I said, "Oh, you know, if only I'd been able to write it, you know." And she said, "Well, I could ghostwrite it for you." And I was going, "Well, what's one of those?" You know, so she explained what it was. And she'd never written a book before. She'd written a few medical journals, but you know, she was really keen to get involved. And she, because she'd known me so well, we were able to work really closely. And that whole book was just me, you know, as she got right inside my head and right inside my soul. So yeah. 2006,
Incredible.
that's when it happened.
Yeah.
But an awful lot has happened that actually within those years in terms of my paintings. I became really prolific in terms of my output with art and also with my music, you know. And so there's been a lot of that going on as well. So,
I gotta ask you. All the listeners are probably like, "What happened? What happened?" You know. But before I'm gonna ask one more question first, and that is, after everything that had happened, did you find it difficult to talk about it first, or did you just come out and tell everyone and go, you know, this has happened, this is incredible? Because I've found other people I've interviewed on this topic have kept it for themselves a long time first. But
yeah, that wasn't the case with me actually, because in all fairness, when it happened, I didn't actually know anything about near-death experiences, and I actually thought, you know, that I was the only person this had happened to, not in an arrogant sense, but you know, I just kind of figured, wow, that was incredible, and I thought, I can't wait to tell the world, and how am I going to tell them, you know? And so I started telling close family and friends because I was in hospital for quite some time. So it was them that I started to tell. You know, I filtered through the people that I felt that I could talk to about it first, and then made my way through them all. But everybody that I told totally got it and was totally sort of drawn into the whole thing. And I could tell that there was nobody at all who was doubting my story. So that made me feel confident to be able to go out into the world and talk about it.
beautiful.
Because I felt that it was very important to do it anyhow. You know, I was very keen to find out more about it. I mean, once I got out of hospital, I went straight online and I started to look in. I was Googling in, you know, what had happened. And I discovered what a near-death experience was, you know, and I started finding out more and more about it. So I realized that it was quite a common thing that would happen to other people. And that was great because it made me feel like I was part of a sort of society. And it was like affirmation as well, you know. In fact, one of the most beautiful, moving things that happened was it was when I first started on my first painting, and I was looking online one day, and I came across a story of a young girl who was only about sort of 6 or 7 years old, I think, and she'd had a near-death experience, and she'd done like this drawing, you know, with marker pens of what she'd seen in her near-death experience, and it was like, wow, it was just like a stick drawing, if you like a child would do, very crudely. Well, no, crudely is the wrong word, but very basically, you know, and honestly, and it was just like the painting that I was almost completing, you know, myself. And I called my sister and I said, "Come and see this," and she just went, "Oh my goodness!" She started welling up with tears. She said, "That's your painting. That's your story," you know. So that was a wonderful moment of affirmation just to see that.
Wow.
You know?
Wow. There's no coincidences there, is there?
No.
And please take your time on this as well, whatever you feel you need to share. But do you mind sort of talking us through actually what happened from that day on the train station?
Sure. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. I was. I was seeing off a friend actually. So at the time, I'd gone to stay for a few days with my sister because I was down on my luck. I was running out of work and I was running out of money. And my sister said, "Look, you look in a pretty bad way. Come and hang out with us." So I did. And I just met this girl a few weeks prior to that in London, and she came up and stayed with me for a few days. So she got to get back to London. So I went down to the rail station to see her off. I helped her on to the carriage with her bags, and gave her one last hug and a kiss to say goodbye. And then the buzzers went, for the doors to start closing. So I stepped back, and I misjudged it. And the bottom part of my coat, well, I didn't misjudge it actually. I mean, I just like they just slammed to really quick, and it just caught the bottom corner of my coat, and just as I stepped back, that was it. It was jammed and I couldn't pull it free. And I was tugging like mad, And I looked around for a guard on the platform and I couldn't see one. I just thought, what's going on? There should be a guard, but there wasn't. And so I just yelled at the top of my voice, hoping that somebody from the station would come running through. And the engine started to rev up. I started hitting the buzzers on the sides. They didn't work. Nobody came through, running through the carriage or anything. Then I just looked into the eyes of my friend Anna, and I just saw, when I saw the look in her eyes and on her face, I just thought, this is it, it's over. I'm not going to survive this. I'm going to die. So it was really odd because, it's like normally, if you think about it, most accidents happen so quick you haven't got time to even contemplate it. Whereas with this, I got actually moments to think it through, that it was all about to unfold before my eyes, And the train started pulling out of the platform, out of the station, sorry, and it pulled out at a terrific speed. They go really quite fast. You don't realize when you're sat inside, you're normally on your mobile phone or whatever straight away out and you're like texting. Whereas when you're on the outside of it, it's incredibly fast. And I just lost my footing eventually and I got dragged along the platform. Then I got pulled between the edge of the platform itself and then sucked down. And it was like, it was just like sort of being pulled down into the gates of hell. It was just like, from that moment into the sheer darkness, and it was a very violent experience. I was just tossed around relentlessly like a rag doll, and I just felt like it was me. I was just like this. I was very aware that I was just flesh and bones at that point, and that the train was like this huge mechanical beast, that was just going to eventually kill me. And it was just, it was very terrifying. But I suddenly found myself thrown to the ground as the train was still relentlessly going on. So I just kind of like, I thought, just keep your head down, because part of the undercarriage could have just come and whacked me over the back of the head, and that would have been it. It would all been over, And that didn't happen clearly, And eventually the train moved on, and there I was lying there, just kind of completely thinking, I'm alive.
Did the train stop, or did it just keep going? I had no idea.
No, it just carried on. It just
Oh my
disappeared off
God.
down into the countryside. And it didn't stop for some time. My friend told me, that
I was gonna say, what about your friend on the train? Like, it's like,
oh gosh, yeah. I mean, bless her. It's like, for her, it was a really, really horrific. She said that she ran through the carriage and looked through the window, to see if I'd got free, and she saw me go under. So,
oh my God.
And but it was interesting because she told me afterwards, a few weeks later, she said, "Look, I hope you don't mind me saying this," but she said, "But when I saw you rolled under with such grace." And I said, "That's really interesting because I'd thought it through. As I say, I got time to anticipate what was about to happen, and I went into sort of fight or flight mode, and I decided to go into fight and try to sort of get through this." And I remembered seeing a small news item where an infant child had been thrown from a burning apartment block, and the child had landed like 3 floors without any injuries, and they put that down to the fact that children don't tense up like adults. So that's what I did. I just sort of relax your body,
No way.
and so yeah.
So
And I had 13 and a half seconds to think all that through, because the rail police did a massive inquiry. They'd done all the things like the King's Cross fire in London, all the big rail accidents, and so they were working on it. And at the end, they said to me, look, we finished our inquiries, but we just don't get it. You should be dead. We've done all our figures and calculations. You should not have survived that. And so I knew that a force bigger than me and all of the whole thing was that had saved me, along with me relaxing.
Wow,
So,
unbelievable. Yeah. And once the train had passed and gone and you're left on the tracks, what happened next? Were you unconscious? Were you still?
No. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's all right.
No, I was fully conscious, yeah, throughout the whole thing, actually. So I just kind of lay there. I just started to check, for my, just as you would do, to check your wounds, because I was in agony. I was in an awful lot of pain, and this sheepskin coat that I've been wearing, that was like a thick pile one, that couldn't get free, was now ripped to shreds, especially down the left arm, and my left arm had been severed, and it was completely all ripped right open. So I remember seeing all the inside of my arm, and rather than freaking out about it, I remember just going, wow, I could see all the workings. I could see every single tendon. And I was kind of fascinated by that. I remember saying to myself, that's me. That's the inside of my arm. That's the inside of my body. It was just, obviously shock as well was hitting them. But then, yeah. But the paramedics arrived really quick, because there was a hospital just around the corner. It was only a small hospital, but they were there. So they were jumping down on the track and trying to cut through my clothes and, get me onto a stretcher. And somehow they got me off the track and onto the platform. I mean, it's about a 7-foot drop. It's a long way down. But they did, and then they got me in the back of the ambulance. And then I remember the doctor said to me, "Look, you're in a pretty bad way, and there's a hospital around the corner, but the one that's going to save you is quite a drive. Can you do it?" I said, "Yeah, let's go." So we did. So I arrived in hospital, and there was like all these medics and doctors and surgeons all waiting there for me. And I remember seeing them as we walked in. I thought, oh God, this is pretty serious, isn't it? And the sound of their voices, they sounded really nervous, And I thought, it's not over yet, is it? I just could see there's all these figures were going over my head. E45, no, we need an E46. No, E46. I thought, shit, this is not good. And so then my family arrived. They got there, so it was just it all seemed kind of surreal, because the surgeon said, "Oh, your family are here. Would you like to see them?" I was going, "Yeah," So they came in, and they were really distraught, of course. I mean, my mother was, in tears, and it was so funny, because she was crying, and I said, "Mom, I'm so sorry. It's always me bringing all the drama into this family." She said, "It's not your fault," which it wasn't my fault at all, but it was just, you can see now just where I was at in my life before, that I always felt like a failure, and I was failing at everything. So I just felt like this, this sort of like burden. But
it's incredible how we put that burden on ourselves, isn't it? As well.
Terrible.
I think we can all relate to that. Everyone listening to this,
Absolutely. I tell that part actually quite a bit, when I do these interviews, because it's really important part of my story and the whole structure of it. And it's great, because I have had quite a few people who've got back to me, and they've said they can relate with it, that they've been there themselves, and they know how it is. So yeah, many of us have beat ourselves up unnecessarily.
Totally. And sometimes we need a wake-up call, and geez, you got one, and incredible. So what happened next? So how did the near-death experience all fall into this?
It happened just pretty much at that point, actually, when I was by that point I was losing an awful lot of blood.
Right.
I remember my family was saying, there's a lot. Well, they weren't telling me, but they told me afterwards. It was so bad, and I was aware that things weren't too great. And then it was just at that point that I went from all the sort of the franticness of the hospital and the sort of brightness of all the fluorescent strip to a beautiful darkened space. I'd left my body, and I'd gone somewhere really in a warm, comforting, darkened room, I thought it was at first. And I just kind of looked around me to see where I was, to get my bearings.
Wow.
And the first thing I noticed were these pulsating colors that were all around me. They were like sort of colors of ambers and yellows and reds and greens, and they were making me feel very calm and relaxed and secure.
How I'm sorry to interrupt, but how
Yeah,
coherent were you at this point when this was happening?
oh, I was fully coherent. I
Right.
mean,
Okay.
to the point that straight away I thought, you know, I'm dead. I actually thought I didn't make it. I didn't make it. So here I am. Because I was worried. I didn't think I was. I was worried that I was going to make it when I was in hospital. You know, it was in such a bad. I was in so much agony, and there was so much sort of negative. Well, not negative, but a lot of frantic energy going on. So yeah. So I figured I hadn't made it. I figured I was dead. I didn't resist it. I was quite happy to be there. You know, it's not like I wanted to die. But after all the sort of drama that I've been through and all that, it was like it just felt great to sort of just be at peace and just feel really relaxed. And I just kind of went with it, you know. Yeah. So I lay back on what was now like a huge slate rock. It was like a big sort of medieval altar, if you like. And I just kind of thought, wow, this is really comfortable. And he wouldn't think it would be normally, but it felt really lovely to lie on, you know. And I just kind of laid my head back and I just kind of went with it. And I remember just lying there. And then I looked up, and as I looked up, there were like 3 grids of white lights were just kind of closing in on me. They're very symmetrical, these grids. And the intensity of that pure white light was just so bright that normally it would be too much for the eye to be able to bear. But this was fine, you know. In fact, it was very enticing, this light, because I felt that it was healing me. I knew that it was healing me. And so it was very seductive. And then it was pretty much after, as I lay there, just bathed in this light, that I thought I should check out my body, you know, my wounds, see how everything's looking, you know. So I just kind of lifted my head and looked down, and everything was fixed. Everything was back in place. You know, my left arm that had been severed, there wasn't even a scratch or bruise, you know. And I was just covered in this like blue satin sheet, which was keeping me really relaxed and comforted. And this white light was just kind of reflecting off it, and it looked really beautiful. And then I felt the presence of somebody near me, and so I looked, and just at the edge of my sort of feet was this person that was just stood there, just staring at me. And this beautiful being, like a sort of an androgynous being, you know, just with this pure white blonde hair and this skin that was just glowing from within. This light was coming from within this being, and he or she was just wearing a contemporary black t-shirt, very similar to what you're wearing now. You know, it was just like, and so I remember thinking to myself, that's unusual. I expected to see something a bit more sort of ethereal, you know. But there you go. I'll take that, you know. But it was interesting because I felt like I'd known this person for a long time. You know, when you go to a party sometime and you meet someone for the first time and you connect and you chat and you both turn around and you go, I feel like I've known you for ages, for all my life. You know, it was like that, but it was a lot more intense. It felt like I'd known this person from my former life or whatever. You know, it was just, but I just couldn't work it out. I was kind of going, who are you? I know you, don't I? And he or she just kept smiling back at me reassuringly. And I felt that, you know, I was sort of in the kind of, this was like the guardian of my soul, if you like. You know, I felt very protected by he or her.
Holy moly. Then, so you have that experience out of your body, and then do you remember coming back into your body from that then? What happened?
Well, it continued on that, you know, the experience. So I didn't come back straight away. I mean, I do remember coming back into my body. Yeah. It was quite a sort of a sudden crash, if you like, back in. But, you know, there were a few other events that unfolded while I was there, that you know, there were more people started to appear. There were 2 female forms that appeared either side of me that were healing me. They'd got their hands just kind of slowly hovering over my body. And the energy that was coming from their hands just felt really powerful. It was almost like I felt like a vibration of love that was coming from their hands. You know, there was an overwhelming sensation of love throughout this whole experience. You know, it was just, and it was unconditional. The love was just like brilliant. It was just like all the different forms of love that I'd had throughout my life, whether it had been through lovers or animals or, you know, my parents or my family, you know, but it was all sort of condensed into this whole experience. And it was wonderful. And, but yeah, one of the most important things from the whole thing while I was there was I saw what many people see is a tunnel of white light. And this tunnel of white light appeared, and it was very huge, and it was like coming towards me. By this point, I'd realized that I wasn't in the small darkened room at all. I was actually in the universe itself, you know, and I was just like, there I was in the universe. And this thing was this beautiful tunnel was coming in very powerful, and it was like all these flames are slowly rotating around the sort of perimeter, if you like, of this tunnel. And the energy coming from this was just so strong. It was just like, I felt like every molecule of my body was just kind of like vibrating with this pure energy of love. And I just knew straight away. I thought, what I'm looking at now, this is the source of all creation. You know, this is God. It's not the God that we all pray to who's normally in some kind of human form, you know, whatever our faith may be. It's a tunnel of white light. This is this huge tunnel which is edging in closer and closer, and this is the source of all creation. So that was the most profound sort of moment for me. And it was actually pretty much soon after that had happened that I found myself being thrown back into my body and back down in the hospital. Yeah.
Far out. Because I've interviewed a few people on here that have had near-death experiences, and Anita Mojani is somebody that springs to mind.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she was saying that she had a choice to come back or move on. Basically, did that happen for you, or it was just like you?
It didn't do. No.
Right.
It's I figured that I'd seen enough. I'd seen other aspects while I was there. I'd seen a beautiful waterfall of stars, which was really incredible. And that was really awesome, like the size of Niagara, you know. And I'd seen other universes and galaxies, and
Wow.
I'd learnt a lot while I was there. I you know, it was all telepathy. Nobody spoke to me. There was no spoken word. It's just all telepathy. And I figured that they'd made the decision to send me back. They just kind of figured, right, you know, he's ready to go back. And I think maybe they knew that I was really keen to start talking about it straight away, which I was, which is, I feel that's what near-death experiences are all about, that we're all sent back for a reason. There's without a doubt, there's a reason behind. I've met quite a few people now since this book has been published. I've been doing quite a few interviews, and so I've been interviewed by people who've had near-death experiences. So it's great chatting to them as well, and just having this kind of like, oh right, you felt that as well. Yeah, I felt that too. But we've all got this common denominator, and that is that we all feel that we've got a purpose, and what's happened is just so profound that you can't ignore it. Some people do, actually. I mean, I met a guy when I was in hospital, you know, and you know, he was, because we used to go to the physio gym there, and there were all amputees in there. And this guy, he'd had a high-speed chase on a motorbike, you know, by the police, and he was on a stolen bike, and he came off at 125 miles an hour and survived. And you know, I'd been telling people in the physio about my experience, and they'd all listened. And he came up to me afterwards, and he kind of snuck over. He said, "Hey, mate, you know that thing you talked about?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, I had one of those too." I said, "Really?" And I said, "Right." I said, "Have you told people?" He said, "No way." He said, "You know, all my mates would just think I'm crazy." And I said, "You've got to tell people. You've got to, you know, you can't let this go." But I'll never know to this day whether he did or not. You know, who knows? But it makes me realize that, you know, there must be some people who, you started this conversation off by saying to me, you know, how long did it take me to start telling people? So yeah, I'm sure in certain aspects, you know, for some people they may feel it's not easy, but for me, yeah, it was important.
Incredible. That's incredible. When you came back and you come back into your body and you were back in the hospital bed, had you noticed any kind of physical changes or anything from the healing experience from being outside of the body? Like, was there anything visceral that you noticed straight away, or was it over time? Or
Well, what I did notice was that the healing process that had gone on was they were healing my soul. They were healing all those feelings of guilt and lack of self-worth and shame. All that, a lot of
wow,
that had just been taken away from me. So that was, so inside, I could hardly move. They'd given me my own room in the hospital, because of the severity of my injuries, but I was just kind of like, it was fine. People were coming in to visit me, family and friends, and they were expecting the worst, and they were going, nearly everyone would say, it's unbelievable, we walk in here and you've got tubes coming out of you, but you're just glowing within, and you just got this incredible energy coming from you. So I knew that I was still almost attached to like an umbilical cord to that other realm. It was still feeding me all that energy. So yeah, so there was an awful lot of love inside me and an awful lot of energy just to do. I mean, I decided the first night in hospital, I went into surgery for like 8 hours straight away, and then when I came through, I was just lying in this room, and I thought, how am I going to tell the world about this? And I was scared I was going to forget it, because, like I said, I thought no one had had anything like this happen. So I thought, I'm going to do a painting. I'm going to do a huge painting. It's got to be like a Michelangelo. It's got to be like a big Renaissance style, like the Italian ones where these biblical scenes are painted so dramatically. And that's what I wanted to do. And there was no kind of like ums and ahs about it or lack of self-worth there. It was just like, I'm going to do it. So, yeah, but it was interesting because the actual, my consultant, my surgeon, he was really amazed at how I was healing physically as well. He was just saying, you're healing really quick, this is we're really, really pleased with how fast you were going, and he kept saying to me all the time that we can't get over how fast you're healing. And I started to tell him, about, well, I think I'm being helped from, he was like, okay, that's enough. He was like, don't tell me anymore. I mean, he's a scientist. I mean, he's a wonderful guy. I mean, without him, I wouldn't be here. I need science just as much as I needed the help I was getting from that realm.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating that you say that, because I had, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. I literally interviewed him a few days ago, Jeffrey Olson, and
yeah,
he had a near-death experience, and he'd lost his wife and 18-month-old baby in a car crash, and he survived along with his 7-year-old son.
Oh gosh.
And when he was in hospital, he ended up having this incredible out-of-body experience with his wife and his baby and everything. But the doctor, one of the trauma specialists that came into the room while they were operating on him, saw his wife after she had passed in the room. And they became very close with Jeffrey, because Jeffrey told him and he told Jeffrey, but he wouldn't speak about it because he was worried about his career, his credentials, and everything he'd done within the hospital.
Yeah.
But apparently he ended up writing a book on it, because there was many times that happened to him, because he was always in the surgery room as well when people passed on and things. So brilliant. Yeah, it's amazing. So I just wonder how much is left unsaid that's out there on the table, ready to be heard. Like you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wonder as well.
Yeah.
I do. That's a great story. I didn't realize. I'll have to look more into him. Yeah, I'd heard of his name and seen him around, but I didn't realize that was his story.
Right.
Yeah.
So how long were you in the hospital for? And then the next question is, when you left, and you're obviously a different person. Had you had any more of these experiences since, in any shape or form?
No, not a near-death experience. No, I haven't had one since. But my spiritual path opened right up. I came across a spiritualist church. And yeah, and so I started having spiritual healing. And once I started having spiritual healing, again, my wounds started to heal incredibly fast, and I started to heal really fast. But I started to sort of feel like a connection with that experience that I've been through quite strongly, and when they were healing me, they were noticing just how much energy was coming off me and how much I was actually absorbing all the energy that was coming through them. And not only that, I spoke to one of the healers recently, because I still go, I keep it up, and because it's just, I just love going there. And and she said to me, she said, do you remember, she's German, she said, oh, do you remember you used to levitate when we were healing you? Because I'd been lying down at that point. And I said, I knew that I was sensed that my arm was lifting and things like that, my injured arm when you were healing me, but I didn't realize I was levitating. She said, yeah, you were. Then they just didn't tell me, So there was an awful lot of energy, really powerful energy coming through throughout that whole healing. Yeah. But yeah, spiritual healing is fantastic. I mean, it's something that I really try and promote a lot.
I was going to say, how would you describe, like, what would be the cliff notes of a spiritual healing if somebody's not familiar with any of this kind of work?
Yeah, sure. It's very calming. It's almost like a meditative state, and it's very much like Reiki healing, I guess, where it's just like hands on, but there's no manipulation. And you normally have one or two healers working on you, and they conduct energy through from spirit, as they say, and so they're pulling all the energy through, and then they're bringing that light and energy through their hands, and it's coming into you, and they're drawn to various parts of your body or chakras that need healing, and so that's basically how it happens. And you've normally got some beautiful calm music playing in the background and some candles, so it's a very nice calming atmosphere. So yeah, it's something that I've kept up for years, and I'm very keen to promote, because there's just not enough people going. A lot of people, I don't know, maybe it's just some people are scared of the word spirituality if they don't know anything about it. If you're not part of that sort of company, if you like, spirituality is kind of like, it's like, whoa, what does that mean? Spiritual healing? You're going to shake the devil out of me or whatever. So it's yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, I hear you. For me, spirituality was such a foreign concept, and I don't even still know like what it is, because it's so easy to hang our ego and identity on anything, that we do as well. And I am amazed that people are not aware of how incredible we truly are and what is actually possible, even with what you're talking about with spiritual healing and working with energy and working with people, and how rewarding and healing it can be for one person if we didn't fear it and just had a curiosity and explored it.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's
Yeah, and most healers do it for free as well. A lot of them, where I go, it's free. It's just a donation on the door if you want to leave money, and that's it. So it's a beautiful thing, yeah.
Wow. So then, once you've had your accident, you've come out of hospital. When did you realize you were going to be doing music? And
right, that actually came through from spiritual healing. Actually, I mean, the painting.
Was that right?
The painting happened, as I say, when I was in hospital. I decided there and then I was going to start painting. So I started doing that. Some friends of my sister's, because I recovered at her house with her family. They own like a yoga Pilates center, and they said, "Look, have you started that painting yet?" And I said, no, I kept putting it off because I thought, am I going to be able to do this? And it was this big canvas was leaning against the wall. And they said, look, we've got a studio. You can come and start work there. It's free for a week because we're decorating. I said, okay, great. So I did start it, and then it started coming together. And I realized that this wasn't just me doing this painting. I was channeling ideas through because there's no way I could have put all those paints on. They were helping me to sort of bring colors of skin tones out and being adventurous and throwing all these different things in that I didn't even know I was doing. It's like a massive crash course in how to paint. And so each day I would just sit back and I'd go, wow, look at that. And I knew by then I was being helped. So I go, thank you so much, and as I still do. And the music came about through spiritual healing because some of the healers are clairvoyant, and they just give little messages at the end, nothing too big. They just say, oh, I was picking up this and that, a beautiful angel stood by your side or what have you. But they kept saying, why am I seeing a violin placed across your chest? And then another one saying, I'm picking up Beethoven and Bach. And then one of them said, they're telling me you're going to write some music about your experience. I went, right, okay, so I went home and thought I'm going to get to work on that. And I'd got this old synthesizer which was up in the loft, and and we pulled that down, and I just plugged it in, and these ideas had come through again from spirit. I just heard these notes, and it's just like this little chord progression, and I started playing it
Wow.
on this little synthesizer, and all I got was an old cassette recorder, and I recorded what I got, and I thought that sounds really lovely, and I just thought this should be played by an orchestra. This is not, because I thought it was just going to be, I'd be writing a little 3-minute song to be played on a guitar or something, but no, this is an orchestral piece. So again, synchronicity. While I was in the yoga Pilates center, people would come up and see my painting when I was painting, and one of them was a cellist who played in the local orchestra. And we became friends, and we met for coffee one day, and she said, "What have you been up to?" And I said, "Oh, I've just been working on a piece of music." Yeah. And I said, "I think it sounds like it should be played by orchestra." And she said, "Oh, well, maybe we could perform it one day." And I thought, that would be good, So again, it was just like another alarm bell. I thought, well, why not, And so my brother said, "Look, I've got this hardware package or software, whatever you can attach to your laptop, and you can play what you play on your keyboard, and then it will transpose that into notation, and you can print it off for the orchestra." So I did do, and he helped me. He knew
Wow.
how it was all. Yeah, and that was it. I still can't read or write a single note of music, And but so I turned up in the cafe, met them, and I said, "What do you think?" And they looked at it and ummed and ahed, and they said, "Yeah, we'll do it." So they offered to perform it, and then again synchronicity started to happen, because they said, "Oh, do you mind saying a few words to the local press, because we normally do if with a composer?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." So I phoned them up, or they phoned me and stuff, and they said, "Oh, you're the guy who went under the train," because I was in the local news and the BBC and all that, So and then they said, "Oh, this is going on the front page," I went, "Oh, brilliant." So after that, the phone started ringing, and then the BBC did come, and they wanted to interview me about the music, and they turned up at the rehearsal and filmed it. And so suddenly the
Wow.
concert sold out like 2 weeks before we'd even thought about, it happening, which was a real shock to them. And so I knew I was being helped now by bringing the energy of this whole concert together, because when it happened, it was a beautiful event, because there were so many people there. There wasn't me sat there looking over my shoulder, hoping that people were going to come. I knew there was a guaranteed audience, and that the atmosphere was just beautiful. So yeah, it was there was a standing ovation as well when it finished. So it was just like tremendous. So yeah, so it's quite a huge moment for me,
That
that. And then
that's mind blowing. Sorry, that is mind blowing. That is unbelievable.
thank
Wow.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was mind blowing for me. It's just to sort of sit. It's great to sort of actually sit there and hear something that you've just written, especially those first 3 chords that I did on that little old cheap Spanish synthesizer. To hear an orchestra playing it's just kind of like it's like hearing the best stereo system you could possibly hope to have. It's like 3-dimensional sound. Yeah, it's brilliant.
How do you live your life these days? If you right, if you've had these experiences now, is there anything that phases you anymore? Or are you like completely in flow all the time and completely trusting to what is?
No. It doesn't work like that for me. Yeah, I'm a much different person now. But I'm like most people say who've had NDEs. You don't come back like superhuman. You're. I had to put it like this. I had to have a lot of therapy as well to deal with post-traumatic stress disorder. So I do suffer from that, because I don't think that the mind and body, it can go through something that huge, anything like that. It's like soldiers who go, to war-torn countries, and they suffer from it. I totally get it when I see them interviewing on the TV, and it's something that you can't ignore. It's there. So I'm affected by post-traumatic stress disorder, but ultimately, my spirituality and my constant learning sort of helps me to deal with these scenarios and stuff. So as much as I possibly can. Yeah. And also, to be honest with you, music and art is just such brilliant therapy for anything. And so it helped me to be able to process what had happened with that accident through that.
Through an expression. I was going to say, is that like your meditation practice? being able to just lose yourself in those things and be present with what you're creating.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it is. Because I mean, there's been once or twice things. I've had a few sort of major upsets in my life, like we all do. Certain things have happened, and the first thing I've done is I've either started painting or I've sat down and started writing some music. And funny enough, when I do sit down and write music, some of the best stuff comes through. I have to go back and piece it all together afterwards. But when I do, I think, wow, that's really great. So it's a wonderful process which I'd recommend to anybody. Well, I mean, we all know that, don't we? I mean, it's art and music therapy is a very huge thing that's used for lots of people for different things.
Totally. What do you think has been the lessons for you from all these experiences, all the way from the instance for the human experience?
The human experience is that the one that I brought back with me was self-love, and once I'd realized that I got this self-love, then I'd suddenly got self-worth and self-confidence. But the other thing that I learned from it as well was because I didn't really feel like I fitted in the world before, I was constantly sort of aspiring to people who were successful, especially when I moved to London. I was hanging out with people who were working in the music industry, working in record companies. And I thought, wow, they've all got these amazing jobs and this incredible lifestyle, and they're not academic. So I thought, why not me? So I was constantly trying to be like those people. And there's nothing wrong with those people at all, but it just wasn't me. I wasn't being authentic to myself. So what I've learned that is it's really important to be authentic to yourself. And once you do that and you stop and allow that to happen, it's incredible how the doors will slowly open that are meant to open for you in front of you without you pushing them, so that's
Fair enough. Do you think, I often ponder about this as well, to connect to our authentic self, which I think leads into our daily purpose and alignment, the heart and the mind and everything feels much more aligned. Do you think we almost have to hit a rock bottom before we get smacked to get over there? Or do you think it's very possible for anyone to wake up tomorrow and go, I'm going to be on purpose?
I think it is possible. I mean, generally speaking, yeah, when you do hit rock bottom, then that's a lot of the time when it's highly recommended that you do try and stop and allow that adversity to unfold and then try and learn from it. But you don't have to have that adversity. I mean, a perfect example is what's going on with the world now. The world's been forced to stop, with the whole COVID situation. So I just really think that we could do that. We can all just say, all right, the world has stopped. So, I can't go to work now. I've got to go into lockdown and what have you. When I say I'm talking about people. People can't go to work. So why not just try and take that time just to try and think, what? Does it matter? Does it really matter? And just try and be authentic to yourself. And a lot of people were when we had the very first sort of lockdown situation in this country, anyway, in the UK. I was really amazed at how people seem to adjust to it, and I thought people are doing it. I thought they're getting in touch with themselves. They're being authentic. They're baking their own bread at home. They're teaching their kids, and and I thought this is lovely. People were painting as well and getting creative and putting all this stuff up on Facebook. So it can be done, But I think you've got to it's not like you've got to just do it as something that you try out. I just think just follow it through. Don't let go of it. Do you know what I mean? Just stay with it, once you've started.
Totally. What have you got planned for the future? Now you've released your book. How long has your book been out? Shine On.
It came out in June this year.
June this year.
So yeah. So it came out right out in the middle of the pandemic. So which was interesting for me because it was like, people say, what did you do throughout the lockdown period? I was going, it was the busiest few months of my life, But so thankfully, we've got the internet, we've got computers, and we can do this. Like we're doing, I can talk to somebody like you, the other side of the world, and it's not a problem. So yeah. So the book came out in June. So that's continuing to sort of evolve, and it's bringing me to sort of do interviews and chat to people, which is lovely. And I'm currently sort of the next project will be to put together an album basically of my music, you know, because I've been commissioned to do other pieces and stuff. Because at the moment I've just got my first symphony that I talked about up on my website, so I've left it there for people to stream for free, because that kind of, it ties in with the whole story. If you read the book, it all sort of works around that whole sort of symphony. So that's why I've left that up for people to see. And I'm being overwhelmed by how many people just have been loving the music, but not only that, they're getting something from it as well spiritually. And so I thought, no, I've got to put together an album there. So that's the next project, to put that out, you know, as a compilation of.
How exciting! How exciting! I'm just flabbergasted, mate. Honestly, I got one last question for you before we wrap it up, and I ask everyone on the show. And it's, with everything we've covered today, what would you like to leave our listeners to ponder on?
I would say try to understand the concept of being in the moment, you know, because when I was in that experience, in that near-death experience, I forgot about the past. I forgot about all my past worries. I was always concerned about messing up throughout my whole life. All that had disappeared, and I stopped worrying about the future as well. And I was in the moment, and it felt great just to be in that moment. And I just thought that is something that doesn't have to be in that realm. It can work. It works for me here. You know, it works for me. Where as soon as I start thinking, oh my goodness, things are going wrong, I just think, no, stop and be in the moment and look around you and think, actually, things are okay as you are in this space. And you don't know what the future holds. The future doesn't actually exist. You know, we can't tell. So just try that. That's what I try and. That's my take. That's my take away from a near-death experience. Yeah.
Incredible, mate. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on the show. Everyone listening to this, if you pause, there'll be links to David's book, his website, the symphony, all in the show notes directly below. So please go over and support David. David, thank you so much. That was honestly mind-blowing. Your integrity, your honesty just truly shines through. And I wasn't sure what to expect today's conversation, mate, but that was
oh, that's brilliant. So. That's fantastic to know. Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on.
The book's called Shine On. If it's funny enough, you just say Shine. So yeah, please, if you want to buy it, so that'd be great. Yeah. I shouldn't have said that, should I? But I would just love you to it'll bring it all together. So yeah.
Absolutely, mate. As far as I'm concerned, and for everyone here, like I think we all need to support each other, and we all need to support getting these messages out, because I promise you, people listening to the show today are listening to the show because they're fascinated or really interested with this work. So and I have no doubt everyone here would be happy to support everyone that comes on, like, because it's just a message worth sharing as far as I'm concerned. And I'm honored to have you on the show. So I appreciate it, mate.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, honestly. It's been great chatting with you. It's lovely to meet you.